Hello and welcome to ADHD Support Talk Radio. ADHD Support Talk Radio is sponsored by addclasses.com. Sign up for free webinars and events by going to www.addclasses.com. And ADHD Support Talk Radio is the longest running podcast for adults with ADHD. My name is Tara McGillicuddy, and I am the creator and the co-host of ADHD Support Talk Radio. And today, Lynne Edris, my co-host, is back today. And in just a moment, we're going to be talking about ADHD and expectations. But before we get started, Lynne, can you let people know a little bit about yourself and the best way to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I'm excited to be back here with you again today. Again, my name is Lynne Edris. I am a productivity and ADHD coach and co-host here. As a productivity and ADHD coach, I empower professionals to take control of their time and their lives so that they can fulfill their potential more easily and have more time and more energy for what matters most to them. And I'm a woman with ADHD myself, guys, so I've been there. I've done that. I've gone from living in what I always say is the constant state of chaos and overwhelm and underperformance that we all know far too well to live a life of more success and fulfillment than I once dreamed was possible for me. And I believe that every single one of you can share your own version of that same success. You can learn more about me and what I do and the programs and services I offer at www.coachingadvantages.com.
So welcome. And as I said, my name is Tara McGillicuddy. In addition to being the creator and co-host of ADHD Support Talk Radio, I'm also an ADHD productivity coach, adult ADHD advocate. I've been providing online ADHD support resources since 1997. So you can learn more about me and the products and services I offer by going to my website, taramcgillicuddy.com. So today, Lynn and I are going to be having a discussion about expectations. And one of the reasons I thought about talking about this today is this theme keeps coming up when I'm working with clients is people have a lot of times unrealistic expectations about things. And because they don't have the clarity or the realistic expectations, it causes a lot of negativity. So I just thought this is a very timely thing to talk.
I think it's always timely with ADHD to talk about expectations because, again, you hear it all the time. I hear it all the time from everything from getting, quote, I'm using my quotey fingers, you can't see, back on track. I want to get back on track. I've fallen off the wagon when, maybe we weren't really on track at the place we thought we were to begin with, having unrealistic expectations about what we can accomplish, having an unrealistic perspective about what we've accomplished and what we've gotten done. And really, so much of that does go back to clarity.
Yeah, so creating clarity, having clarity around what it is you're setting out to do, I think is a huge one. And I know I've seen this a lot, witnessed this a lot, and I can relate to it myself. Is a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I have this task that I'm trying to do, and I'm avoiding it. I'm procrastinating." And I'll ask, "All right, what is this task?" And the person will start explaining, and it's not a task more often than
Right.
not. A lot of times it's a complex project, but in the
Right.
person's mind, in their head, they're thinking it's just a simple task. And that right there, it makes so much sense why they're in that paralysis and they're having trouble moving forward because they're not realistic about what's involved in it.
Absolutely. And sometimes what's involved in it and what done means, right? If you haven't clearly defined what the end point is, what the desired outcome is, the way I always say that, how you know you're going to be done, that's a big part of the battle right there. So when you can start to say, this is done when X or the desired outcome for this is Y, then you can start to wrap your brain around a little better about what will it take me to get there. And I really don't recommend to my clients, that to sit down and try to work out all the steps, that's a shutdown right
Mhm.
there. That makes me want to
Yes.
run for the hills, but it'll give you a better idea of what the path is. What are some of the pieces that have to be accomplished or moved forward or, kicked off, so to speak, or taken care of to start to move the progression of things toward done. So that like complexity and that lack of clarity, I often call it nebulousness, is one of the biggest reasons that we struggle with stuff. It's one of the biggest reasons that we get overwhelmed and shut down is when things don't have really good definition. When you know exactly what the desired outcome is and what you're going to be getting yourself into, it's a lot easier to get yourself started. It's a lot easier to get yourself moving. But it's that stuff that is more nebulous, that stuff that is not well defined, that can really be a shutdown for us. And sometimes things that seem like easy, simple tasks, as Tara was saying, really have that nebulous quality and are more complex than we realize they are. And as I'm saying this, Tara, the thing I'm thinking of, and I'm like laughing to myself, is like some kinds of phone calls, right? We think
Yes.
of it as I'm just going to make this phone call, right? When you really look at the phone call, why am I not just picking up the damn phone and making the phone call? Do you know who you're going to call? Do you know how to get in touch with them? What information, what resources do you need to have before you make that phone call? I
Yes.
had one of those on my to-do list for a couple of days and I realized I'm not making this phone call because I need to know it was an eye doctor appointment to give you way too much information, but I need to know how many more months of contacts do I have left? I need to know when my last appointment was so that I know that
Mhm.
I'm not going in less than a year, which my insurance won't cover. So there were a whole bunch of like little things I had to do to look into to pick up the phone and make the appointment,
And in
right?
2025, making a phone call to a medical office is not like it was 15, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
where you'd call a small doctor's office back in the
And
day. I know we've seen
and get a
old
human being,
and
right?
get a human being. And within 3 minutes, you've had that figured out. You're done with the phone call. Now, when you call a doctor's office, you get a recording. And I think I timed my recording once and it was like 3 minutes just listening to all the things on the recording. And then you press whatever number. And so making a phone call, you gave great examples of what's involved in making a phone call, but making a phone call is not as simple as making a phone call like
It
it used to
isn't.
be years ago. So I
Absolutely.
can see, and that might be the time where it's like, okay, maybe I make a phone call, but maybe it's easier just to go on the app or send
Right.
them an email or
Right.
book online or whatever, because you get through in what's being done. But I think we both gave great examples of something as simple as making a phone call usually isn't anymore.
Absolutely. And scheduling an appointment. There's some calendar Tetris you have to play. You've got to know that your calendar is trustworthy. You've got to know that your calendar is accurate to have it in front of you and know when you can do it. You've got to give some thought to so many different pieces and parts. And that's if you know who you're calling. Right.
Yes.
So I had a client the other day who she said, my car has needed serviced. I think there was like some light on or something. And she Googled it and she knew what it meant and she knew she needed to get it into the garage. But she wasn't sure if it was still under warranty. She wasn't even 100% sure. She knew the dealer she'd had a bad experience with recently, and she wanted to find an independent mechanic. So the to do actually isn't schedule the service first. First, she had
Yes.
to figure out
Yes.
who she was going to schedule that service with. So this stuff, like, it has layers. And
Yes.
anytime something has layers and we don't look to see what the layers are and we don't give it clarity and definition, that's the kind of stuff that really shuts us down. So we're expecting ourselves to pick up the phone and make a phone call when really there were 10 things I needed to do before I called that eye doctor appointment. And as I'm on the phone, I'm like, the thing I forgot was they're going to want my insurance information. And I
Mm,
didn't have that in front of me.
yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff where, wait, what do I need to make the phone call? We've really got to drill down on what are the pieces and parts of this and how can I give this clarity? And it's essentially breaking things down. But again, it's not a step by step. Step one is this, step two is this. It really is like a higher level look at what are the elements to this? How am I going to know that it's done? What is the outcome of this? And it's easy. It's to have an appointment on my calendar and to have that kind of behind me. But there are lots of other things where the outcome requires a little bit more thought, like an email, right? Some
Yes.
emails are hard to send. Some kinds of communication are harder because we're not clear on what the desired outcome is.
Yeah, those are definitely great points.
And they seem like tasks, right? Like the reply to email seems like a simple to do, but it does
Mhm,
require some clarity sometimes. It does require a little bit of pre-thought or pre-work. What's the point I want to make? What's
mhm.
the point of sending this email? What information do I want or need to convey? Really giving some of those things a little bit of thought and getting a little more clarity around it is important too.
Yeah, some emails are simple as yes and no or
Right.
whatever time, but some emails require research. They
Yeah,
require you to think things out depending on your frame of mind. And
absolutely.
there are some emails where they can get you emotionally. And I can relate to that, or I've sent
Absolutely.
emails that I probably weren't best to send it when I sent it. If I had taken a deep breaths and researched it, or came back and looked at it, or what I like right now, what I've been doing with things like that is putting it into ChatGPT and saying, okay, what are they looking for? And what's a professional way to apply? So I sound professional and nice. So those are things that when we don't have the clarity ourselves, that
Right.
sometimes using a tool like ChatGPT can help you gain clarity and actually help you draft the email response too. Working with a
Absolutely.
coach, just sometimes taking that deep breaths and maybe writing a few things out. So when we don't have the clarity, when we don't have those realistic expectations yet, it's okay that there are ways to gain clarity, to
Absolutely.
become more realistic. It's not, but I think the first part is that awareness, looking at, okay,
Absolutely.
am I as realistic about this as I could be? Can I make it any clearer? Can I have more clarity around this?
Absolutely. And the other piece of that I was thinking about as you were talking, Tara, is like how often do we get to the end of a day or end of a week or get to a point where we look at the things that are not done or the
Yes.
things that are not done in the way that we expected or wanted or hoped to have them done. And we don't see everything else that we did, everything else that we
Yes.
did accomplish. So always, so many of us are prone to always focusing on what we call in coaching, focusing on the gap between where you are and where you want to be, not focusing on the progress that you've made, not focusing on the points that you should be giving yourself for effort. I always say, not focusing on what you're learning, what's better, what's improved, not giving yourself credit. Again, that's another way that unrealistic expectations can show
Yes.
up. Absolutely.
Yeah, it is important to pay attention to what you still want to do, what you still want to
Absolutely.
do, what you're moving forward towards. But it is also essential to process, give yourself credit, be aware of the things you did complete. Because sometimes we don't realize how much we've done, how much energy it involved, or what we actually did when we go back and review that or journal it or have somebody else make us aware of what we did. Okay, yes, this is might be why I don't have the time and the energy to focus on something else because this took a lot. Or just not realizing that you've because a lot of things what I people like, oh, I started something. When I
Right.
go back and what does that mean to start? What did you actually complete? What were the actions you took? When people are like, oh, I did this and that. And I'm like, you did a lot more than start.
Right.
You may have done 75% of the project, or you've done so many things that sometimes when we say, I just started or I haven't done enough of it, that holds us back.
Right.
When we look at it more realistically, this is what I completed, this is what I did, you have that sense of accomplishment, but it also creates new neural pathways and it helps you be more successful in the future with other things.
Absolutely. So that when you start to give yourself credit, you start to give yourself points for effort, as I say, you start to acknowledge the progress that you're making in something. You're changing the way you're looking at things and you're able to look at what's working and what's not working. So if you're not giving yourself credit for progress, if you're not giving yourself points for effort, you're also not pausing to notice what is helpful and what is working. And that's such a
Yes.
big part of the battle in terms of learning how to manage the things that are difficult for you, whether they're difficult for you because of your ADHD characteristics getting in your way, or you just haven't found a way to do it that really works for you. But that shift in perspective it's important in terms of how you see yourself and how you see your day and your life and time and all of that. But it's also really important kind of data to start to gather when you can pause and look at where you're making progress, where things are moving forward, and why. When you can look at
Yes.
that less negatively in a more kind of a non-judgmental way, then you can start to see, okay, this kind of thing tends to be hard for me. And the past few times I've tried to start this thing this way, it's been easier. So I'm going to go that way again. You can really start to fill your toolbox with the tools that really work for you and the approaches and ways of working that really work for you.
Yeah, you brought up a great point about looking at your successes and accomplishments. It will help you with the challenges. That was
Absolutely.
something I wasn't even thinking of, but that
Right.
is so important.
Absolutely. That's knowing how you work and what's easiest for you is a huge part of making the things that are not easy for you easier, so that you can, when you can step back and you can be less judgmental and you can give yourself credit for progress and points for effort and all that, and start to see what works for you, then you can start to see how you can apply those things to other areas where you're struggling and see those common threads and see really start to develop new ways of working that are supportive for you and that are helpful for you. Absolutely.
Yes. So, is there anything we didn't cover today when it comes to this type of thing?
I think the one thing that I hear all the time that's connected to expectations that we didn't talk about that much. It's a big thing, but just to make sure that we mention it, because I'm sure it's going to come up for some of our listeners, is expectations in terms of time. The time blindness, knowing how long something's going to take, guesstimating how long something's going to take, even remembering how long the same freaking kind of thing took in the past is,
Yeah.
it's a pretty hallmark struggle for those of us with ADHD.
Yeah.
It's characteristically difficult. So that's one of the things that I always talk about with clients is, instead of trying to estimate, look at it a little bit differently. And it's not really semantics. It's a slightly different shift in how we look at, kind of time. I call it time budgeting. And that is, given what's on my plate, how much time is this worth today? Not
Yes.
how much time should this take? Because when we go to how much time should this take, our perception of time when we have ADHD is very much connected to how interested in or stimulated by we are when we're doing something. When we're doing something that's engaging, time feels like it's going faster. When we're doing
Mhm.
something that is boring or dreadful, time feels like it's going slower, and we perceive it as that it will take longer. So that's a really important shift. And it also requires you to get a little bit more clear. Okay, I've got a really full plate. I can give 30 minutes to this thing. So this is where I have to be at the end of 30 minutes. This
Yeah.
is done for 30 minutes for today. That
Yes. Yes.
that clarity is really helpful and really important as well.
Yeah, and I've noticed that overestimating versus underestimating how long some things takes, they both can have negative impacts on you.
Absolutely.
Because if you
Absolutely.
think something's going to take 5 hours and it takes 10 minutes, you've been procrastinating and avoiding. And then and
Thoughts are
then
good.
they're more often than not, I've had people say to me, oh my gosh, 20 minutes, I got so much done.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it only took that amount of time. I've been
Right.
procrastinating for avoiding this task for like weeks, months, years. But I like, what you were saying about giving a certain amount of time you're going to dedicate to it in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, setting that timer and getting as much done as possible in that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, what you're focused, you have all the materials, you have the tools.
Right.
And sometimes just simply setting that timer, and I'm like setting a timer as a dial, and no one uses a dial timer anymore.
I do.
But and sometimes that can be more helpful when you use those old-fashioned
Absolutely.
type of kitchen timers. See
Absolutely.
it go back, but just the act of setting the timer and having that visual, whether it's a dial timer or the countdown timer, that psychologically helps you get more done knowing that there's a
There's an
stop and a
end point.
start. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you're giving it some sort of clarity. You're giving it some sort of definition on the front end. by setting a time allocation.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
that doesn't mean that when that time allocation is done, the whole project has to be done.
Yes.
So it could be, given what's on my plate today. Again, my kind of concept of way I approach time budgeting is, given what's on my plate today, this is worth 30 minutes. So
Yes.
I've got to decide, first of all, what is done for 30 minutes. And that usually isn't done.
Oh.
Where is my end point? A lot of times for me, has more to do with a place that I can stop and pick back up so that I have
Yep.
some clarity there. I leave myself breadcrumbs so that the next time I come back to it, I know where I was and what I was doing, because odds are really good with my ADHD. I won't remember, and it'll be like I've never done it before if I don't leave myself really kind of trail of breadcrumbs, as I say, notes.
Yeah.
bookmarks for
That's
myself.
important.
Absolutely. But then you get to, say you allot 30 minutes and you get to the 20-minute mark. If you have some sort of timer or chime or something that goes off for you to check in with yourself, that's when you can make a choice. You can make an intentional choice. Is this worth more time?
Mhm.
Would this be easier to come back to at another time? You can pause for a second and say, do I want to keep going? Is this more complex than I realized it was? Why am I where I am right now and not almost done? And that's all, again, good data. It's not that I work too slow, everything takes me longer. Yes, some things take us longer, but some things don't. So really looking objectively, again, non-judgmentally, at
Yes.
where am I? Where do I want to pick back up? When do I want to pick back up? And making that be like a pause and a conscious choice is a lot different than every time I set the timer and say I'm only going to do something for 30 minutes. When I get to 30 minutes, I don't stop because I'm finally on a roll. Like, how many times do we tell ourselves that? I'm finally doing stuff, so I'm going to keep going. Well, if you do that every single time without stopping and pausing, first of all, you're going to lose track of time and you're going to miss crap that is on your calendar or other stuff that you wanted to do. But after a while, excuse my French, but after a while, you're going to call bullshit on it, because you're going to tell yourself you only have to do this thing for 20 minutes. You almost always keep pushing after 20 minutes. So that you're smart enough to lie to yourself, because you've got that historical data too. So if you make it a conscious choice, again, this is what's on my calendar. This is what's on my plate. This is where I am right now. Get a little more clear, get a little whatever. I'm waving my hand like you can see it. Back up a little bit cognitively and emotionally. Where am I now, and what choice am I going to make right now, given what's on my plate for the rest of the day?
It takes practice, because if
Absolutely.
if this is something new and different, you're like, oh, that sounds good. It takes a while sometimes, but it takes practice, especially if you're judging yourself and you're used to beating yourself up. To switch to that analytical type of frame of mind can take practice. So know that it might not happen the first or second or third time, and it's practice.
Absolutely.
You don't switch on. Most of us, some people do. Some people like, oh, I can just look at it like I'm measuring analytically just data. That it might be enough for some people, but if you've gone through decades of just judging yourself and beating yourself up, that's one thing to take into account. It could take a bit to shift more to that analytical type of perspective that you're just looking at data. But you brought up some great things.
Absolutely. It's a big problem for a lot of us. Expectations are, a lot of us with ADHD are very optimistic in the way we look at things. We put more on our plates than we can really manage. We want to do all the things. We see the potential in all the things.
Yes.
And seeing potential and seeing possibilities is a wonderful characteristic, but not if you're going to beat yourself over the head with it all the time.
Yeah.
I see all the potential. I see all the possibilities, but I can't attain them all at the same time. That's not a bad thing. That's you being human. Embrace that quality and try to temper it a little bit with some clarity. And again, always making sure that you're giving yourself points for effort and you're being nice to you and kind to yourself and gentle and gracious with yourself when you realize you're falling short or not where you want to be, so that you can learn something from it and make things better and easier going forward.
I think we had a great discussion, and don't want to overwhelm people. We could probably keep talking about this for hours.
Could, absolutely.
We could write a whole book about this or a whole course.
And we probably should, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So before we get going, Lynn, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave people with today?
Yeah, I would love to have you join us in the ADHD Support Talk Facebook community. This could be a really great conversation for us to have with the group members. What works for you? Where does this show up for you? How do you address it? And
Yeah.
we're happy to support you there. And of course, the community is supporting each other as well. It could be really powerful. So please comment on the video, comment on the webpage for the blog, or I'm sorry, for the podcast. Join us in the ADHD Support Talk Facebook community to connect and let us know your thoughts, what works for you, where you struggle, and let's support each other.
Oh, thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to this episode of ADHD Support Talk Radio. Be sure to stop by our website, ADHDsupporttalk.com, where you can listen to past episodes and you can sign up for our Facebook community. This is Tara McGillicuddy. Thank you so much.